you, Honor. We're here in the matter of the State of Ohio versus Kevin M. McCarthy. This is case 22-CR-422. Mr. McCarthy is present in court. He is accompanied by his attorney, Mr. Henry Hiro. He was last before this court when he entered a plea of guilty to one count of reckless homicide, a felony of the third degree. At the time of the plea, the court ordered a pre-sentence investigation report along with victim impact statements. Those having been accomplished and delivered, we are here today for sentencing.
Thank you, Mr. Howell.
Your Honor, the statements by the prosecutor are correct. We have had an opportunity to speak to the probation department and supply letters for consideration by this honorable court. We're ready to proceed.
All right, go ahead.
Your Honor, on behalf of my client, Mr. McCarthy, in this court's lengthy career, prosecutor's lengthy career, there's many cases that we get, but I've never had a case that parallels this case. Two individuals that knew each other for their entire life. Two individuals that shared the same friends, shared the same common interests, were brought here together because of a horrible decision that my client accepts responsibility for in this courtroom here today. As the court has before in the probation report, up to this incident, my client has had an exemplary career. Graduate, served honorably in the armed forces, was a public servant in two different fire departments. And I think what was most telling, Your Honor, was the fact that I was able to supply 29 letters to this honorable court, and each letter was better than the letter before. And it wasn't exclusively from family. It was from friends. It was from some mutual friends. It was from individuals that lives were touched by the conduct of Mr. McCarthy as he grew up. And as we stand here before you today, one of the letters that I dropped off to this honorable court this morning through witness victim was written by my client some time ago, expressing his sorrow and wanting to say he's sorry. The reason why the victim's family didn't receive that letter was because of me. This case was pending at that time, and I could not allow him to send a letter of that nature, but I said, put those words on paper, and there'll come a time when we'll have a chance to share it. Now, I'm not here to talk about the facts of that night, because none of those facts or none of my statements here can erase what happened that day. But I am here to tell you I'm asking for a minimum sentence on behalf of Mr. McCarthy. He accepts responsibility for what he did, and he had an adult career of public service and service to others. He has a strong family that has been with him throughout this whole procedure, throughout the whole process. And I think what's most telling, Your Honor, it wasn't a family that came to me and said, hey, listen, what happened here, it's not all Kevin's fault, it's not Kevin's fault. It was a family along with Kevin that said, I have to accept responsibility. I have to accept responsibility, not allow Kilberg family to go through this anymore. And I am now going to put myself before this honorable court. I know this court, the reputation of this court, that you will take all for the purposes of sentencing. And with that in mind, Your Honor, I know my client also would like to address this honorable court with your permission.
Is there anybody else you wish to have?
No, sir.
Speak? Okay.
We're going to rely on the letters that were submitted. And for the record, the letters were also submitted to the prosecutor.
All right, thank you. Ms. Mulligan?
Members of Christian Kilberg's family are present here in court. His mother, his father, his extended family. I don't know if at this time Fran Kilberg wishes to speak. This would be the time. Or if I've also been informed that John Adams, who is Christian's uncle, Fran's brother, they want to speak to the court. Is that so?
I would like to speak.
Will you just state your name, please, and then tell me what it is you want me to know? Go ahead.
The courtroom looks a whole lot different than a church, doesn't it, Kevin? Ash Wednesday today. What you did was the gravest sin of all. You killed my my son. You killed Eric's brother. Our family grew up with guns. My father had one. My brothers had guns. We knew gun safety. We never would have allowed Christian to have a gun if we did not know that he was respectful of such a deadly weapon. When I heard that you were pulling guns on each other, I was in utter disbelief. I never saw that behavior from Christian. What was going on in your apartment? To say that you were his best friend? You were his best friend in disguise. Because a friend doesn't smash somebody's eye with his guitar and scratch his neck with your fingers or punch each other in the shoulder, especially when Christian had a plate in his shoulder. I highly doubt that he would have thought that that was amusing. What was going on in that apartment? I hear that this was an accident. Kevin, it's no accident. You never point a gun, anybody knows. You never point a gun at somebody's head or anybody that you don't intend to destroy. You and God know what happened. God knows what happened. Nobody here really knows what happened. And I pray for Christian's soul too. After I found out about it, I was terrified. Absolutely terrified. It was Holy Thursday. I talked to Christian and I talked to you on that Tuesday, and I said, St. Rita's is having a communal confession. Why don't you guys stop up here? What did you guys do? You laughed at me. That was the Tuesday before you shot him. We're all going to be extinguished from this world. Every single one of us. I live with the torment every single day. It just runs through my head all the time, and I don't sleep. There is nobody, there is no human that can ease my pain. God is merciful, and I believe in the mercy of our Lord. And I don't know where Christian is. I ask myself that all the time. I don't know if he's suffering, and I pray. Because that's the only consolation I have. And I pray for you too, Kevin. I pray for you too. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Mr. Adam. Thank you. Your Honor, the state is asking for a maximum penalty in this case. The harm is so great, the conduct so egregious, But even the maximum somehow demeans the seriousness of what took place here. There's no question this is not intentional, purposeful behavior. But there are so many troubling aspects to what took place. It's hard to choose which one to address here this morning. Reading through the pre-sentence report to see what is Kevin McCarthy's account to the probation department about what took place that night. Heard his statements to police, the things that he said to those detectives maybe were colored by the shock of what had happened. But what does he have to say after he has an opportunity to deliberate, to think about it? He has an opportunity to write a statement, and then he has an interview with the probation officer. In his written account, he writes, "My firearm, unknowingly loaded, had discharged and struck my lifelong friend in the head." He then says, "Filled with terror and sorrow, I attempted to render first aid," which is just not the truth.
It's not true.
And in his interview, the probation department says, "We're pointing firearms at each other, and the next thing you know, the firearm went off and the bullet struck my friend in the head." Describes it as a tragic evening. There are words like tragic accident, horrible accident, mistake. Breaks my heart that this happened. This didn't happen. The floodwaters didn't rise. The tectonic plates didn't shift. Kevin McCarthy made a choice. He made a series of choices. I don't know if these euphemisms are just to promote this image that there are a couple of boys messing around like little boys waving around toy pistols. That's not what happened. Kevin McCarthy took a Springfield 9mm pistol and put it to the left temple of Christian Kilburg. And McCarthy pulled the trigger. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't something that happened while they were trying to clean it. This is something that happened after he spent the evening drinking, celebrating his friend's raise at his new job. Drinking, by his account, 6 to 8 beers and a shot of tequila. Hey, let's go home and play with those guns. He's engaging in a game that happens maybe 10 times, he says. Had friends that had seen this behavior. Unfathomable that they didn't say, "Don't do that." Of course they did. And he took a gun, he says, that Christian gave him the gun. There would be a good reason to open it up and see, to check, is it loaded? He was handed a Springfield pistol. Oddly enough, he owns a Springfield pistol. That's his own pistol was in the trunk of the car. So, but those Springfield pistols all have the same safety features. They have a chamber viewport. If you didn't want to bother to open see and clear it, you gotta look down and see the copper of the casing in the chamber. From across the room, the first officer can see the bright red circle on that weapon that shows that the safety is off. At so many junctures, the choice could have been made. But the choice was to place it at the temple and leave a muzzle print. We talked about accepting responsibility. And yes, he has come in, entered a plea of guilty to that charge of reckless homicide. And he is here today to accept the punishment. It should be a maximum sentence.
Thank you.
Judge, can I just?
Yeah, I was going to ask you, have anything further, Mr.
Yeah, I do, Your Honor. Just for the record, it's funny, life looks different in a rearview mirror in 20/20 hindsight. And it's kind of ironic that no one in this courtroom was there with him that night. And to get up here now and say that all the responsibility fell on my client has accepted responsibility. To say that my client's not remorseful is disingenuous at best. And to raise the temperature in this courtroom, my client received that weapon from the victim in this case. And but for the grace of God, one family could be sitting in that side of the room and one family could be sitting on this side of the room. That wasn't my client's gun. And the one fact that was left out in the soliloquy here was before that gun was given to him, the chamber was cleared because the police found the shell on the side. To say that my client did not give life-giving aid is ridiculous because none of us were there. My client called the police. My client stayed on the scene. My client didn't clean anything up. And my client's version, if you're going to parse the words, because you're asking for a maximum sentence for an individual that had no prior record, for an individual that received the gun from the victim. And the one thing that wasn't mentioned in this courtroom that you know is there was a third person that saw everything in this case because they were FaceTiming somebody else. And that was ignored in the comments by the prosecutor. And that person recognized that the instant that that gun went off, my client was in shock. Did it off to give aid. So when we're talking about the facts in this case, we're talking about a young man who accepted responsibility of a horrible, horrible event. We have to be true to those facts. We have to be true to this family, to not foster a fact that's not true. We have to be true to this courtroom. And that's why I put it upon you, Your Honor, with all the facts that you know. I just want to make sure it's perfectly clear. Who is anybody in this courtroom to tell that somebody doesn't have remorse unless they're with that person? It's really easy to say what happened when you're not there. Because I can get about 30 different versions of what happened by people in this courtroom if they want to talk about it, but they weren't there. And you know through the investigation there was a thought process in the beginning of what happened, and because of the thorough investigation we know what happens. Because it's supposed to be a search for a truth, not to parse on people's emotions. And for that, Your Honor, I defer to the court.
All right, thank you. All right, I have reviewed the pre-sentence report, the drug and alcohol evaluation. I received the victim impact statement. I reviewed that. I received the letters that Mr. Heiler talked about last week, and I reviewed all those letters. I've listened to counsel. I've listened to Mr. McCarthy, Ms. Kilberg here today. And Mr. Heiler, you're correct. Hindsight is 20/20. That's always true. And Ms. Kilberg is correct that truly only Mr. McCarthy and God know what happened on this occasion. There's some discrepancy here and there, and I'm well aware of the fact that there was extensive investigation in this case by the Willoughby Police Department. In fact, there were several search warrants that I signed, and so they went through this, and they found whatever there was to be found. So what's particularly disturbing and noteworthy about this situation is, Mr. McCarthy, you've got extensive experience with the military. And you know that weapons are, you know what weapons can do, and you know how to handle weapons. And the fact that there were, I think by your estimation, at least 9 other occasions that this nonsense occurred in the apartment is unbelievable to me. It's unbelievable that a firearm could be treated with such disregard. I mean, we have trials in here and there's a firearm involved, there's a safety through the barrel of the firearm to make sure there are no accidents. Everybody who identifies the firearm is asked if the firearm is cleared, even though it's obviously cleared because there's a safety running through it. So there's always extensive caution taken. And, you know, I'm no firearms expert, right? I've got my carry concealed, okay, but I don't own a gun, okay? But one of the things I went through in the class to get that permit was that you never point a weapon at anybody, empty or loaded, unless you intend to use it. So, now, the facts don't indicate to me, from a review of this case, okay, that you intended to shoot Christian, okay? But you did, right? And that was because there was a lack of concern about the seriousness of that weapon and what that weapon could do. So there's indications both ways in this case, okay, that you attempted to render aid to Christian, and then there's indications that you didn't attempt to do that, okay? But that doesn't matter at this point, okay? To the issue of remorse, I don't think Ms. Mulligan indicated in her statement that there was a lack of remorse, and I think there is remorse, okay, for a whole myriad of reasons, okay? But the fact is, you guys are out drinking at Panini's, you're out at the Diamondback, and you end up back at this apartment doing for what is at least the 10th time that this kind of nonsense occurred. And as a result of that, Christian is dead. Hindsight is, being 2020, you wouldn't engage in that on that 10th occasion, or actually on the first occasion, or ever, okay? Because you're a guy that knows the dangerousness of a firearm. Now, if it were your firearm, if it were Christian's firearm, that doesn't, to me, it doesn't really matter, okay? The first thing when somebody hands you a firearm, you know this, right? And it's not a threatening situation, you're gonna clear it. If you're gonna play with it, you're gonna unload it. But it didn't occur here. Now, as I said, you've served honorably in the military. And as I said, I reviewed all of these letters, okay, and they all speak highly of you. There's no question about that. The problem here is that is the result of your action leaves Christian Kilberg deceased. And there's no getting around that. Okay? And there were, Ms. Mulligan indicated, there were a series of decisions made that night that culminated in what happened here. And it wasn't only that night. I mean, those decisions go back to the 9 other occasions when this nonsense occurred with you guys. And I know that it occurred between you guys because of your mutual friend who witnessed that on the telephone. in past occasions and implored you to knock it off and indicated that by her statement that she knew somehow, because of her past from 2012, knew somehow that this was going to be the result. But nobody listened to her. You didn't listen to her. And here we are. And when I was talking to Ms. Mulligan and Mr. Hilo in chambers before I came out about this case, both of them indicated that this is probably the most tragic case that they've been involved in because of the impact on both sides of what happened here. But things don't come before me unless they're completely avoidable. There are maybe a handful of cases I've had in 8+ years that were avoidable. This was avoidable. And it's unfortunate for everybody involved that we're all sitting here today. But here we are. So in addition to all of the reports and letters and the victim impact statement, I have considered all aspects of 2911, 2912, and 2913. And as you know, with the firearm specification, it's a 3-year mandatory prison sentence. And on the underlying offense of reckless homicide, I'm going to impose a sentence of 36 months in prison, which by statute are consecutive to the firearm specification. And the costs are assessed. When you are released, you may be on post-release control for up to 2 years under the Adult Parole Authority. If you are placed on post-release control, they will impose conditions upon you. If you violate those conditions, they could return you to prison for up to 9 months for each violation, up to 1/2 of my sentence. If your violation of post-release control is a new felony, you could receive an additional consecutive prison sentence for that violation, the maximum of which would be the greater of 12 months or the time you have left under your term of post-release control. Is there any further, Ms. Mulligan?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
Mr. Hilo?
No, sir.
All right, we're adjourned.